You serve God with your whole soul, or only part of it. Now, those are the two ways people are serving Jehovah God today. Some persons are serving God with their whole soul, and then others are serving Jehovah God with part of their soul. Now, as a servant of Jehovah, you're in either one category or the other. Either you are serving him with your whole soul, or you are serving him with part of your soul. Now, since we mentioned service to Jehovah God, someone might raise the question, well, does that mean you can get in either category? You please God and get life, gain that paradise? You can make your choice, serve him now with your whole soul, or serve him with part of your soul. I doubt if anyone here believes that. That's why it is significant to just straightforwardly mention the point that there are some numbered among Jehovah's servants who serve him with part of their soul and not their whole soul. Now, we ought to be concerned because this matter of whole soul service to God is significant. It came up when Jesus was here, and in answer to a question, he showed how vitally important it is that God be served with our whole soul. Now, I'd like you to see how this matter came up in Luke chapter 10, if you'll locate that in your Bible. And a question is raised, not uncommon for Jesus to have that done. And then he provides an answer that gives us a right perspective on this matter of whole soul service. See verse 25, Luke 10, 25. Now look, a certain man versed in the law rose up to test him out and said, Teacher, by doing what shall I inherit everlasting life? He said to him, What is written in the law? How do you read? In answer, he said, You must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart and with your whole soul, with your whole strength, and with your whole mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Now, the importance of that question is seen in that the man said, Teacher, you know all things. Would you tell me what I have to do to gain everlasting life? Well, there is no more vital question than someone could raise other than, now tell me what I have to do to get everlasting life. And Jesus just summed it up by giving a little capsule form of the law. And what it came down to, he said, you must love Jehovah God with your whole soul. See why we said that question earlier was significant? Are you serving God with your whole soul or with only part of it? Because Jesus showed everlasting life is reserved for those who serve with their whole soul. Now, if we had just made those statements and read this to a church group, say from Christendom, they really wouldn't understand what we were talking about. I would look out at them and see confusion. Do you know why? Because they don't know what the soul is. See, keep in mind, their teaching says the soul is some shadowy thing inside of you that escapes after death when the body dies. So if they read Jesus' word, well, to get everlasting life, you have to serve God with your whole soul. They wouldn't understand what it was. What soul? Where do you get it? I thought it only got out of you, death or something. So the answer really, if you didn't know the truth about the soul, would not make sense. That would be the case if we were having just an average church group. They don't know what the soul is. They do not teach what the scriptures say about nephesh, Hebrew, and psyche, Greek, for soul. Now, I use the Hebrew and Greek word because I'm not talking to a church group. I'm talking to the best educated persons in God's word on earth today, Jehovah's Witnesses. So when we read Jesus' word in answer to the question, what do I have to do to get everlasting life? That you must serve God with your whole soul. You knew exactly what Jesus meant by soul. See, there could be a ringing in your heart because you studied, you know the truth of it. And I can prove that. This is not like a church group of Christians. I could just ask that question here and watch the hands go up all over the Kingdom Hall just for that simple question. I think I will ask you just to prove that. And as you raise your hand, just kind of look around and see all of the others going up. Now, what is the soul, Billy? Now, just look at all those hands. Remember, this is not Christendom now. Don't embarrass me. Okay, look all over. Now, I want to choose a child to answer that question just to show how profound our knowledge is. Now, a little hand that stays up that can tell me what the soul is. Now, see, I have several. Now, here's the young man here. Would you answer? They took our voice, but just pretend I'm on the other side of the playground, and you just tell me briefly, what is the soul? Excellent answer. I think they all heard. Yeah, we know that the soul is you. So when Jesus said you must serve God with your whole soul, he wasn't talking about something intangible that we could not deal with. As one of our well-taught youngsters brought out, the soul is you. But now I want to read you something. Definition for the word soul. And while I'm reading it, maybe the brothers will hook up the mics because I'll ask you some questions thereafter. And if you have a voice, it would be helpful to you. But now I copied this definition of soul from the Read book. Now I think you don't know it. But, you know, sometimes when we get a comprehensive definition, it helps us to appreciate some aspect or dimension of a matter that we might otherwise tend to overlook. Now, listen carefully, right from the Aid book, page 1535, if that's important for your notes on the soul, but here's what it says. Soul involves entire person, no bodily part, function, capacity, or desire or feeling left out. Includes our emotions, traits, all our personality, not just the body. Now, why did I read that? The Jehovah's Witnesses who know the truth about nephesh. Well, for this reason, that if we're putting this in the context, do you serve God with your whole soul, we've got to think about the entire person. Because we know the soul is you, we might just tend to think we're whole soul and I service to God because I take my body to the right places, Kingdom Hall, field service. I do not take my body to the wrong places, associating with the world or doing things that they would do. And we might sort of think that makes me one who serves God with my whole soul. But now, did you notice in our definition, when it said the entire person, it said no bodily part is left out, no function is left out, no capacity, no desire, no feeling, no emotion. In other words, our soul includes everything that pertains to us. Our desires. After all, the soul is you. And what you desire is part of the soul, your feelings, your emotions, your capacity, your personality, and all of its traits and qualities, all your emotions. In other words, it's you all we see, but it is you in all that you produce and become responsible for, though some of these things may be intangibles as far as we're concerned. So it means when we answer the question, do you serve God with your whole soul, we're not just talking about do you bring your body to a good place and not to a bad place, or do you refrain from taking your body to places that are unacceptable. We're talking about examining all our feelings, all our capacities, all our qualities, all our traits, all our characteristics, all our emotions, all that we are and what we become responsible for. That is still you. So when a young brother here said the soul is you, he was right. But it's all that pertains to you, not merely the body itself. Now, if that's true, I want you to look back at verse 27, where you were in Luke chapter 10, because you notice, though Jesus told the man you had to serve God with your whole soul, do you notice what else he mentions? 3 other parts of the soul. Now, a hand up and can point out the 3 other parts of the soul he mentions in that verse. All right, let's get a hand right here. All right, yes, just move the mic in there. Thank you, sister.
Our heart, our strength, and our mind.
Yes, now that obviously raises this question. If the soul, as we define it and read in the Age book, and we all know it is you and everything that pertains to you, then why did Jesus mention here heart and mind and strength, which, true, are parts of the soul, but he could have just summed it up. If he said your whole soul, that would have included your heart, your mind, your strength, your feelings, your desires, your emotions, your personality traits, and everything. So now, obviously, there must have been reason why he mentioned heart and mind and strength. We know he wasn't redundant in speech, that is needlessly repetitious, just saying the same thing over and over for no reason, but there must have been a point, and we know he knew what the soul was, and that he could have just said, you want everlasting life, serve God with your whole soul, and that would have summed up everything and included heart, mind, and strength. So that leaves the question, why did he mention heart, mind, and strength in that verse? That's your question if you want it. All right, raise your hand. Now, if you want to think about it, just don't raise your hand, but if you'd like to now give a brief comment, then raise your hand. All right, I'm only taking brief comments now. Let me get, all right, brother, right here, standing right where you are. Okay, now just come right to the point. Don't finish the talk, because I got some other points I want to bring out. But you could just kind of focus right on the key matter. Yes.
Because if our mind is not complete, our soul may want to go out in service, say, one day, and all prepared to go. Then the mind can start saying, do you really want to go? And if our mind is really not complete and in harmony, whole soul with our soul, it can present a problem.
Yes, that's true, but I might just say, but it's included. When he said soul, that included the mind. See, I might stubbornly stick to that point. But if you know the teachings of Jesus, he always likes to do this in his teaching there. And you work on it on your speech quality slip, too, and in the school. And can you think what that quality actually is? Yes, right, here's a hand. Just to see if you're thinking just in a word or two like you wanted it.
I would say it was repetition for emphasis.
I like that very much. Did you hear her? Yeah. repetition for emphasis. Yes, Jesus always liked to emphasize things. Yes, he knew he could have said soul and that would have ended, but he knew that there are some principal parts of the soul that you've got to get involved in your service to God. So he emphasized them, and he recognized that unless you put forth a special effort to get those parts, heart, mind, and strength, involved in the service, that they just didn't automatically get in God's service. That's why, remember our question? Do you serve God with part of your soul? And it is possible to do so. For example, I'll just give this little illustration there. Back in biblical times, a man, for economic reasons, sold himself as a slave to another man. Now, another man bought the whole slave. Now he is in his service. Now, the slave is assigned to work in the field. He does that all day long, working very hard out there in the field. Now he comes in the evening. Now here's the question there, just on that illustration. Do you think that such slave, as mentioned, serves that master with his whole heart? All right, here's the answer right here. We describe the action. You think he served with his whole heart?
Well, more or less he was forced to because he was sold into slavery. He might have been a very good worker, but if conditions would be reversed and he didn't have to be there, I'm sure that he would rather be back where he was before.
That's exactly it. In fact, he's looking forward to the time when he can be emancipated from that slavery. Now, same slave, he goes out and he works in the field all day, and then he comes and serves the master at the house and gets his food and all ready so the master can eat and everything. Now, you think he serves with his whole strength? No, and we go to the same answer just given. Why? Because the slave has discovered this. He's discovered I can do everything the master says with 80% of my strength. Now I've got me 20%, so when I go home, I can do what I want to do. He found he doesn't have to put it up, and no one can detect it. He'll get the job done. He'll look pretty good, but he doesn't put his whole strength. Now, what's the point? The point is very clear. Yes, there is a time we come to the front row at a district convention or circuit assembly, and we stand before others and we make dedication vows, and they take us out and baptize us our whole life. We sing about it as we go out to the place of baptism. So in effect, we're saying I'm dedicating my whole life and soul to God, but now, does that automatically mean we get every part of our soul involved in God's service? Not at all. In fact, we could say this, that unless you have made a deliberate effort to get every part of your soul involved in God's service, then you could very easily now be serving God with part of your soul. See, just like the slave, he discovered, well, I don't have to put my whole heart in it. I can have my heart on a few other things I want to do. Or I don't have to put all my strength in it because it really doesn't take it to get done what will make me look acceptable. And the same thing is following our dedication to God. There are many things we can accomplish and not put every part of our soul in God's service and thus be considered as one serving whole soul. Now someone says, well, I know I'm whole soul serving God and coming to meetings because I never miss, unless I'm sick with some emergency. Well, now let's take that. Does a near-perfect attendance record mean that one is whole soul when it comes to meetings? No, there's more involved than attendance record. For example, take this situation. Now, here is a situation. Let's say here is a brother at every meeting, never misses. Opens up the hall, first one here. But now, once we start the theocratic school about halfway through, now look over where he sits, about over there, and you see his head start nodding like that. And you know, every week, and he kind of drops off, nods, he calls it a little nap. during the meeting. Now, there he is. When the attendant comes, I'm sure he'll count him, and he'll be in the final tally. But now, I'll see how you say he's whole soul. In attending meetings, his mind is asleep. He takes naps at meetings. Now, I'm not speaking about the rare time when any of us will get a little fatigued and can't bear up. That's understandable. But now, if that's often the case, there's a problem being whole soul. The mind should be active, looking up the text and meditating on them and understanding them at the meeting. Here's another situation. Here's a sister always here. I'll tell you when she comes. After we sing the song and have the prayer, now you wait 10 minutes and you could turn your head to the aisle and you see her coming in then. And with her children there about, 10, 12, 15 minutes late, that's when she's going to come. Sit them all down. Usually there are no other seats, so they got to bring her down to the front, disturb the teaching process. Everybody's got to watch it and see how she settles this time. Well, she's present because they won't take the count to halfway the meeting, at least. But now the question is, why does she not arrange to use all her strength to get the family ready and fed and dressed on meeting evening to arrive here on time? We're all late sometime. That's not what we're talking about. Exceptions. But we're talking about some who usually are not on time to our gatherings. Or take this sister, always here, and she's on time, early. She comes into the hall, and she likes it over here, against the wall. So she uses this seat, she goes over there, and sort of settles right there, securely, and now she puts her bag down and everything. Now, that's where she stays. Now, I don't care if you bring your study for the first time in the hall. She is not going to get up and come over and greet you. Now, I don't care if you come in depressed and as sad as you can. She's going to sit right there. She's planted herself there. She's going to sit right there the whole time. Now, so what that you're depressed? So what that your study comes the first time and you wanted to meet everyone? She's right there, secure, and that's where she's going to stay the whole time. And even after the meeting is over, now, if you want to say anything, you crawl in between the row and go over, and you greet her and say to her. Now, think about that. There she's present. But now, what does Hebrews chapter 10, 24 and 25 tell us we have to do at the meeting that requires our strength and effort? Okay, here's a hand right here. Remind us of what that tells us is required in connection with our meeting.
It tells us that we should incite each other to love and fine work.
Yeah, that's strength. That's effort. Sometimes you don't feel like it. You're feeling a little depressed. Well, I'm going to cheer someone else up. Make them glad they're here. See, it takes effort to attend the meetings. And then when brothers call for scriptures, to turn to them, to think on them, to meditate on them. Sometimes you watch them sitting there. They'll bring their Bible, and the brother calls for a text. Matthew, he says, chapter 24, we read that a lot. Maybe get to verse 14, and they'll even want to bother to turn to it, just kind of indifferently sit there. If it gets too boring, they go to the back and at some of the assemblies and start a side conversation. You see, there are a lot of activities that could take place in connection with the meeting. Merely being present does not mean we put our whole soul into the meeting. The whole soul into the meeting is one who prepares before coming, is willing to express himself in comment during meetings, is willing to incite others to love and fine work, is willing to make a contribution to the meeting place. See, then he's getting his whole soul involved in meetings, but merely to come and sit in a chair and be indifferent to what goes by does not meet the requirements. So this is why we say when it comes to meetings, we have to demonstrate our desire to be whole soul. Likewise, when it comes to field service, And Luke 13 makes a point that should not be overlooked in this regard, as it would apply to our service in the field. Luke chapter 13, you'll see this was another question that came up. Jesus had the answer. However, verses 23 and 24, it says, "Now a certain man said to him, 'Lord, are those who are being saved few?' He said to them, 'Exert yourselves vigorously to get in through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will seek to get in, but will not be able.'" Now, that was a good question. The man said, "Tell me, Jesus, are those who are being saved few, or will there be a lot saved?" Well, instead of giving a direct answer, Jesus said, "You exert yourself vigorously to get in." He said, "Because many," now notice that, he said, "many, I tell you, will seek to get in." Let me ask you this. If there is someone seeking to get in, or in effect what it means, they're seeking to get everlasting life, would they not have to have at least some knowledge about the truth or the requirements or what they have to do? If they're trying to get in, if they're seeking life, if they're trying for life, could you just be the man on the street that knows nothing about it, or would you have to have a little knowledge about it? That's an alternative question, which means you choose one and it's right, and the other one isn't as right as the other one. All right, what would you say? Would you have to have some knowledge? Or could you just be the man on the street not knowing anything about it? And why your answer? All right, this side you're kind of falling down, but I can get some over here. Okay, come right in this aisle here. Would you have to have some knowledge of the truth?
Yes, you would.
Why so?
Well, you can't seek anything that you don't know anything
All
about.
right, you got to know what to try for, don't you? So it means there are a lot of people that would have some knowledge about it, would do some study or something, and would be willing to put forth some effort. Maybe they'd be willing to commit 70% of their soul to God's service, or 85, or try for a 90 high average. So Jesus acknowledges that. He says, "Many, I tell you, will seek to get in." He said, "But they will not be able." Now, what was the problem? They refused to do what? Okay, I'll give you the answer. Look right in verse 24, the beginning of it. There's the answer. All right, now can someone tell us? Okay, over here we had a... Come down front, please. We've got some hands here. Though willing to make some effort, what was the problem?
They refuse to exert themselves vigorously.
And that's the point, isn't it? So merely being willing, brothers, to commit some of our soul will not get us in. Jesus showed those who really want to gain life will exert themselves vigorously. In other words, they would be willing to commit their whole soul, 100% of it, to God's service, not holding back any for selfish things in life to do what they want. Well, we have to think about that when it comes to the field service. It's commendable to see the pioneer spirits on the increase again in all the congregations. Auxiliary pioneer work is going on a pace which shows so many are doing that. They're exerting themselves vigorously. But the fact of the matter is, some individuals now are not really getting in tune with that. You can see it when it comes to weekends. When persons can sort of choose whatever they want to do. On Sunday mornings, soul might say, well, you've worked so hard all week, you better get some rest. This morning, try for a late brunch and you just make the meeting. That may sound good in bed, resting. But it takes exertion to get up. Well, there are people out there to hear. And so as comfortable as it is here, I'm going to get up and seek to find some I can help. I could maybe help one or two people and then go to the meeting. That's going to mean an extra effort. But it's worth it. Some go to out in field service after the meetings, and it's fine to see many giving good support there. But it's noticed that some will still choose recreation and leisure and ease over the field service. Now, they may do very well in getting to meetings and doing some little service here or there, but the question comes up, are they exerting themselves vigorously in order to get in? Some are, some are not. And the field service is just that important. It does a little good to be faithful on the job all week, meeting the requirements there, and then when it comes to the field service on the weekend, we put forth just a minimal effort. Now we can answer the question the man asked Jesus, Lord, are those who are being saved few? The answer is yes. Many will try for life. See, Jesus acknowledged that. Many would seek to get in, but not all of them would be willing to commit 100% of their soul, particularly to caring for the special work at hand now, to do preaching and disciple-making so that they could get in. Now, we need to ask ourselves, am I in tune with what God's organization is in tune to now? Am I exerting myself in the field? And individually, we have to answer. See, there is much gadgetry that can be enjoyed now in the world the way it is. There's much entertainment, there's much recreation, and then some persons, they just maybe don't feel like doing anything. They want leisure and ease. But whatever it is that might interfere with more participation in the field service should be diminished in our lives. Maybe younger persons would indulge more in recreation and entertainment in place of field service. Maybe persons not quite that young just would like to go to leisure and doing nothing, relaxing, giving themselves up to rest. But Jesus said, exert yourself vigorously to get in. Many, I tell you, will seek to get in. They'll try for life, but they won't be able. Now, are we saying here, then, in considering meetings and field service, that it's very easy to be whole soul in our service to God? No, we're not. In fact, it is not easy because we have an enemy or enemies working against us. Now, in 1 Peter chapter 2, identity is given to what enemies in particular work against us. 1 Peter chapter 2 it is. Now, look there at verse number 11, where he says, Beloved, I exhort you as aliens and temporary residents to keep abstaining from fleshly desires, which are the very ones that carry on a conflict against the soul. Now, there he is. He says, watch out, there are fleshly desires that we all have, and they're in a war, they're in a fight, they're in conflict against the soul. Now, that's not just the body. They're fighting our feelings, our desires. When we read the Bible in the Watchtower, we know we ought to desire to do auxiliary pioneer work or to be full-time in the pioneer work. That we shouldn't desire a career in the world or to be a sports hero and win medals or to go off to a university and get degrees that can get us the praises of men. So these desires, we know from a scriptural point of view shouldn't be there, but it said now they fight against the soul. feelings, personality traits. And this is where we sometimes have to take very drastic action to bring ourselves in line. And after attending the Summers District Conventions, many were able to look at themselves and they say, well, I got to bring myself more in line with what the organization is doing now. And sometimes that requires very drastic action. Notice he said there was a fight, a conflict against the soul, its members, because, see, Satan's strategy is very simple. He would like to take, brothers, any part of our soul that he can get, and take that part and tie it up in fulfilling fleshly desires. Now, if he can tie that one part up, fulfilling fleshly desires, then that means that only leaves for Jehovah God the rest of the soul. And the rest of the soul is not whole soul. So now where we wage a good fight is if we identify what parts of the soul are getting astray from what God says, and then take whatever action is needed to bring it back in harmony with God's requirement. Now, in Mark chapter 9, would you get that, please? Jesus discussed this drastic action needed at times when he discussed the soul and what would have to be done. But now, very interestingly, he doesn't mention the word soul at all. But he discusses various parts of the soul and what might have to be done. Verse 43 is where we begin, Mark 9:43. Now, you see how many times he deals with a part of the soul. He said, and if ever your hand makes you stumble, cut it off. It is finer for you to enter into life maimed than with two hands to go off into Gehenna, into the fire that cannot be put out. And if your foot makes you stumble, cut it off. It is finer for you to enter into life lamed than with 2 feet to be pitched into Gehenna. And if your eye makes you stumble, throw it away. It is finer for you to enter one-eyed into the kingdom of God than with 2 eyes to be pitched into Gehenna. Now, 3 parts of the soul were discussed, right? And Jesus gave a similar answer each time. He said, now, if any part of your soul is interfering with you doing what is not the right thing, he says, better get rid of that part and get into the kingdom of God and get restored what is proper, than to struggle in life and hold on to that part of the soul and then because of catering to it finally not meet God's approval and get life. He said even if it's something as dear to you as an eye. Well, we could imagine it would be very difficult to reach into our face and tear our eye out and throw it away, but Jesus said it makes sense. If that eye is getting you in difficulty, if that eye is causing you to do what displeases God, if that eye is covetous or greedy, if that eye is lustful or doing wrong things, he said, then that's better. So though it wouldn't require literally tearing it out, it would require drastic action to cut back. On the other hand, it may be desiring things of the world that would keep one from basic service to God, meeting attendance and field service, etc. So this action is something we all ought to be willing to take. In fact, we all have taken it. Many have given up things in order to get the truth, and that's commendable. With some persons, it was something as simple as smoking a cigarette or using drugs, and they had to fight a very difficult battle to overcome that. But they did it and got the truth. Now that we're in the truth, there's a tendency to put up with modified qualities and feel, well, I know maybe I should make a change here in my personality. This trait or this quality gets a little out of hand, but I think Jehovah will understand, take me through with it. It's very easy to rationalize, but it won't please God that way. So we have to analyze our whole soul, all our qualities, all our traits, all our characteristics. And what we study in God's Word, are we bringing them all into harmony with what God says, eliminating the wrong ones and cultivating the right ones? Little examination. Question or two. Don't raise your hand. Are you a jealous person? Now, someone might say, why is that question raised? We're talking about the soul. But jealousy is an emotion. And if it is produced by you, it means you're jealous. Jealousy is not an abstract that floats around in the air. And say, I think I'm going to drop down over there and get those sisters jealous. And then get back into orbit and say, oh, the elders are meeting there. I'm going to drop in and get them to be rivals and jealous of each other. It doesn't happen that way. See, it is a quality that is produced, an emotion by the individual. And when it's produced by any of us, then we are jealous. Well, we know in the 5th chapter of Galatians, it mentions jealousy as one of the works of the flesh. Certain situations may incite jealousy. But it should be controlled and not get out of control. A new brother moves into the congregation, kind of good-looking and single. And Sister Eager thinks she will be able to get him as a husband. She tries, but the new brother really falls in love with Sister Patience. Same congregation, and marries Patience. Now the question is, Eager jealous, resentful, or is she happy that, well, her sister's got a husband? And she rejoiced over it, even though she was not successful? See, certain things can bring out human emotions. One sister said, I'm glad you gave that illustration. She said, you know, the same thing happened right here in our congregation. She said, I got the husband, I'm like the one you talked about, Patience. She said, but I almost wish I hadn't got him now. She said, because since we married about 3 months ago, she said there are 5 sisters in this congregation that have not spoken to me since. 5. She said, now the reason, either in the case of 1 or 2, either they wanted him for themselves, and in other cases, they were sponsoring other sisters they wanted to have him. Yeah, well, that happens now. You know, you have sponsors, and they get just as mad with you as the original person. See, if they're promoting one of their friends or daughters, it gets quite competitive at times. She said, yeah, but there are 5 of them right here that haven't spoken to me since then. Now, very interestingly, let me tell you something about the 5. Zealous in field service, I'll tell you that. You won't beat them in the field. Pioneer, auxiliary pioneer. They're on the corner doing magazine work while you sleep. See, they got great zeal for the field service. I don't know, sometimes people think, well, because I preach and come to meetings, I can have this wrong personality trait and Jehovah will put up with it. See, they may think they're serving God with their whole soul because they are zealous and active in the field or at meetings, but now Jehovah says you've got to win in this conflict against fleshly desires. And there's a part of their soul astray. See, that kind of resentful, jealous, envious spirit competing with their sisters and not really loving them from the heart. So I got to give them credit for zeal in the field. You won't beat them out there. They leave out the door of the meeting for field service. First ones out on the street, got their magazines going, offering to others every little minute and showing those hostilities toward their sisters. Hardly can wait for the meeting, the service to end. They're just like this, to hurry and get out. Running out the door of the hall, down the street, coattails blowing in the breeze to get down to the territory and start it first. See, all that type of zeal to preach and teach, and yet here's a soul they're overlooking. How are they getting along with their sisters? Are they speaking to all of them? Do they have love for them? See, Jehovah looks at that too, more so than the field report. We could raise other questions, but they told me to stop about this time. But we have to keep examining ourselves. See, the soul is the entire person. All of the feelings, desires, emotions, capacity, personality traits, qualities, attributes, in other words, everything that you are and everything that you produce and are responsible for. That's you. And so when we say that we must serve God, then with our whole soul, we mean the entire person, nothing left out, which is the reason we all have to continue to study and to pray so that we bring all of this in a disciplined way into God's service. What about you? Do you serve God with your whole soul or only part of it? Now, those are the two ways people are serving Jehovah God today. Some are serving Jehovah God with their whole soul. Some are serving him with part of it. You're in one category or the other. But the only one that pleases God is the one that serves with his whole soul and not merely part of it. So all of us then want to take care and constantly work on bringing that entire soul into God's service. As Jesus answered the questioner, to get everlasting life, you must serve God with your whole soul.